we do Facebook advertising and Google ads, and we talk a lot to people from those companies because of the money that we spend on those formats.
Yep.
And every piece of advice that they've ever given to us is wrong, because it's amazing. They don't understand the niche, and they don't understand the client base. Gamers are smart people, and they don't fall for the same tricks that other companies do, which is great.
You would think at this point that I would stop being amazed by the path people take that leads them to the tabletop industry. I sit down with Micheal Konas of Dogmite Games. Now, I will tell you out of the gate that I am a shill for this company. I own several of their products. I have their GM screen, and I love their work. That's what made my conversation with Micheal even more fun. We talk about what led him and the other Micheal to form Dogmite Games. We talk about the mistakes that were made, the successes they've enjoyed, and the process that they go through from idea to concept, through iterations to final product. Like previous guests, Micheal is so enthusiastic about his work, and it's infectious. So I'd like you to sit back, relax, and enjoy my time with Micheal.
Third Floor Wars delivers interviews, insights, and discussions about everything hitting the tabletop. Rulebooks, plastic models, dice, and cards in hand. Let the gaming begin. Tabletop games let you escape and unleash grand battles and regale epic tales of adventure with your friends. If you love gaming and learning from players, designers, experts, and creators, you are in the right place. Pull up a chair. Craig and Ray welcome you to the Third Floor and the Tabletop Talk Podcast.
Craig here on the Third Floor. Today we're talking to Micheal Konas of Dogmite Games. Their gaming accessories are nothing short of legendary. Now, I love my WoodGM screen, and I also got a great token organizer from them as well. And listeners remember our episode with Alyssa Menold, who works with Dogmite. So, Micheal, welcome to the Third Floor.
Well, thank you. You have an amazing radio voice, so I hope I can keep up with that as we go on. I am not known for my on-screen or on-air presence.
Your voice is incredibly charming, Micheal. You're doing a great job.
Thanks. That's good. Flattery gets you everywhere.
So obviously we're going to spend time talking about the business, how you got into the business and stuff like that. But first off, do you play tabletop games? Because you sure as hell make stuff for it.
Yeah, I played everything.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'll play anything and everything. RPGs are my love, basically. I'm not quite a forever DM, but pretty much as close as you can get to it. My SO is a game designer, so
oh wow,
we try everything under the sun. We're doing a lot of like escape room games right now. She's really into that, and I'm kind of digging on those. They're a little too really puzzly one after the other, and I enjoy kind of an immersive story more for that. I love Fantasy Flight LCGs. Game of Thrones is one of the reasons we started the company, actually.
No kidding.
LCG, yeah, surprisingly. I was in a 10-year Pathfinder campaign at the same time. We just played Champions. We played Marvel Champions, and I like the new shiny, so I get Marvel Champions, and I got to get the Thor deck and the Hulk deck and try it out.
It's a problem.
It is. It really is. But Marvel Champions is okay. I think
it's good. It's a little fiddly. Mm-hmm. Just a little bit. Like I feel like it could have been streamlined just a little bit more, but that's me getting picky because I thoroughly enjoy playing it. Mm-hmm. And I love that they give you the preset decks, so you don't have to do the custom build. But if you're into that, you can. I don't put enough time into the game to do custom build it, so I can just go, pull these cards out. Let's play Thor.
Have you done the Arkham Horror LCG?
Oh, it's a great game.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, one of the best things out there.
No question. One of the slickest designed pieces I've seen in a while. Completely agree. And it's fun to play, which usually fun and Cthulhu don't go together, but it does here. It's fun to play, but it still feels that, the doom threat, like the board game is amazing. Mm-hmm. But again, it's just a little too fiddly for me. Like I just don't have time to spend an hour setting it up. another hour explaining it, and then we got to put this token here, put that token there. It's a great game, but it just, it takes 4 hours to play it. So
Yeah.
it kind of limits things.
Exactly the same way. Like,
Yep.
get me playing, get me on the table, and
And you know what? 20 years ago I had time. I just don't have time anymore. So I'd be curious then, Michael, what introduced you to tabletop games? So before you knew you could do any of this stuff and, push pieces and roll dice, who introduced you to it?
well, I was playing D&D as a 12-year-old kid. So, and I don't know.
Is that really your first?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that was back in bigger belly than I have now, or smaller belly than I have now. But, and then I think my story is kind of similar. You went away to college and didn't play for a while, and then you kind of get reintroduced to it. I was in art school at the time, and I remember going to a Barnes and Nobles and seeing 3.5 edition D&D, and it looked amazing, and I bought it. And I hadn't played. I didn't have friends that played, and it's very strange how life leads you down this weird path, because that purchase of that one book probably is why I'm here talking to you today in a weird
crazy?
sort of event, chain of events. But I met Cameron, the other Mike in the company. Yep. I'm Mike, he's Mike. I call him Cameron, that's his last name. So, and he was, into Catan and Dominion and all the kind of the entry level games now, the old classics now, oddly enough.
Yeah, I know.
And we started having a game group together, and then I got him into the Game of Thrones LCG.
Nice.
But he's very similar to what you were explaining. He just didn't want to build the decks, and we had 2 other guys in our game group. So I found myself building 4 LCG decks every week before we'd play together. I'd send them like a Word document explaining how they would play them before we met, which they wouldn't
And then I would
read.
play the cards for them.
right. Which they wouldn't even read them. So like, what's the point?
That's funny.
Yeah, it's crazy. And oddly enough, it was after one of those game nights, and Cameron and I were standing in his kitchen after everyone else had left. We're like, we really just need a good intro game that we can put together and play that's easy to teach and fun. And we made a little stupid game for our friends to play. And that's...
See, this is news to me. I did not realize that Dog My Games started off making a game.
Yeah, it was a terrible decision.
There was a lot of money in making games.
There's a reason you haven't heard of those games right now. That's
funny.
It was actually, it's a game called Lake Billy. We lived on a chain of lakes in Michigan, and it was a play on the term hillbilly, and it was just a fun kind of drinking game. Really, oddly enough, heavily influenced by an FFG LCG, which is in the May. We had traits and like combos, but it
Game
was
of
still,
chairs.
Yeah, right. But that was we just started to, and Cameron's crazy. He's a nut. So I was in art school at the time, or I think I had just graduated actually. And,
So you guys were young.
Yeah, we were pretty young. Well, yeah, it was 8 years ago, so I don't know if I qualify as young, but that's 8 years younger. So I started messing around on the computer. I'm an analog artist at heart.
Oh, okay.
Oil painter, acrylic painter, watercolorist. And it was my first kind of foray into the digital world. And it's funny, if you look back at that deck, you can see the first one I did, and then I literally...
The learning.
Oh, it's insane. And
that is funny.
I drew like 89 cards for that game.
That's incredible. No kidding. So you said kind of your love is role playing. And the podcast is known for its Malifaux content by Weird Games. But I have very much gotten back into role-playing a game. So we've been doing a lot more role-playing game content. But even before I rediscovered role-playing games, I've made an argument for the past 30 years of my life that role-playing games are the apex of gaming. Like, I love board games. I love Malifaux. I love mini games. But just nothing does it for me like role-playing games. And I get you're nodding your head. So what is it for you that makes you just love them so much?
It's the wide openness. It's you can do anything you want, and show me a board game that can get close to that. Gloomhaven, Frosthaven, Kingdom Death. That they're kind of heavily rooted in that dungeon crawler aspect, and you just can't. I'll role play a game of pickup sticks. Like
Sure.
whatever board game I'm playing, I'm going to be role playing because it brings such an immersive element into it that it just helps. And I think for me, that's it. And there's the camaraderie with a group that is really clicking. It doesn't compare. And I think, it's a co-op game, really. Yep. And as a DM, I view it as a co-op game, and I love co-op games as board games. And I think whatever RPG you play, if you play it right, it's a co-op game that everybody builds together. And I agree, Craig. How else can you get that?
Yeah, you just can't. And when I explain it to people, I say to them, like, I have played a lot of games. In the past 30 years of my life, I've played a lot of freaking games, 40 years of my life. When someone says, what's your favorite gaming memory? Like the top 5 are all RPGs, because it's that shared mythology that you build with friends that just burns in your brain. And, I can't tell you, what game I won of Malifaux 3 years ago, but 15 years ago, I can tell you what the druid that I was, did, and over a period of 20 minutes. It's amazing. So guys, the Insider Insight series allows me to talk to developers, designers, artists, writers, and industry insiders about their creative process and how they approach their work. And today we're going to learn how Micheal and Dogmite Games came to be, their process for designing and creating epic game accessories, and apparently games too, though I've got your new game and I love it, and what it takes to run a company in the gaming industry. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to continue the story of the founding of Dogmite. We'll be right back. There are so many online retailers. It can be hard to find one that is trustworthy, has great prices, along with some reliable customer service. On the third floor, we love ordering our gaming goodies from Gadzooks Gaming. Their selection of terrain, miniatures, dice, custom decor, and conversion bits are curated for gamers by gamers. You'll find they have what you need and what you didn't know you needed to take your gaming fun to the next level. If you mention Third Floor Wars in the cart notes of your order, you'll also get a free gift. And you'll help support the podcast. Check out gadzooksgaming.com and mention Third Floor Wars on checkout to get that free gift. So as we were chatting before the break, we kind of talked a little bit about this, right? So you guys, you finish playing one night, you're sitting around the table drinking beers, and you go, shit, I bet we could make a game. You learn how to work on a computer because of it, right? You learn how to translate your talents to the computer itself. So you push the game out there. And was it called Dogmite Games at that point?
No, it was under Cameron's programming company. I think it was Vobius at the time. So that's probably why it's not in our oeuvre online anywhere. Thank God above for that, frankly.
That's really funny.
We're not good game designers. We are just not. Cameron and I. Now, Dogmite's reached out in other directions since then. But
Sure.
So, yeah, after we released that game, and honestly, Kickstarter was relatively new to us at that time, and it really hadn't reached that kind of Kickstarter crescendo that occurred 3-4 years ago. So we heard about Kickstarter halfway through. We were actually making this game, and we decided to launch it. Just after doing a little bit of research, we put it out there and thought, well, look, here's an opportunity to see what we could do. And we had these amazing grand dreams of, plots of like, if it does $50,000, what are we going to do with that money? And it was foolishness at the time. I think we closed around $9,000, and my Aunt Linda put us over the edge with like a $1,200 pledge. So
God bless Aunt Linda.
God bless Aunt Linda. She is wonderful. Yeah.
That's funny.
So we decided to do another one that was more mainstream, and that's called Livestock Uprising.
Well, before we jump there though, Micheal, so what was the learning between the first and the second, right? So you weren't deterred enough to stop,
not a whole
right?
lot, actually.
Before you jump into the next one, other than you were better graphically using the computer and stuff like that, you did a Kickstarter, so you understood it. what prompted you to say, you know what, this is awesome, let's do more? Like, how did you know you needed to do more? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think it was the act of creation, frankly, for both Cameron and I. And when we did that, I was painting in my studio for 8 hours a day and teaching part-time as a professor at a university locally. And Cameron was working on his own PC game. And I think we both needed a partner. Those are awfully like lonely jobs.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of grasped onto having a partner, and we worked together really well. Still to this day, we brainstorm better than anybody else I've ever known.
That's a big deal, man.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So I think it was just more the love of working together that kept us going. We certainly didn't see it as like a profitable enterprise after the first one.
Let's make another $9,000.
Yeah, exactly. And we did better on the second one. I think we did 15.
That's great.
But the weird part is after we put out Livestock Uprising, which is a better game. Don't play it. Like, just don't. It's terribly linear. The artwork's good. The theme's good. It's a little funny. But, play with your 10-year-old nephew or niece. But
sure,
don't play with a gaming group, please. And while we were waiting for fulfillment for that from China, Mike made a deck box. He was a hobbyist woodworker at the time as well, and had a nice shop. And then we started toying around with that. We made little accessories for the Livestock Uprising game. And we had a little wooden trough as a token holder and card holders, and they went over really well on the Kickstarter. So we kind of decided to delve into that a little bit as we waited, and we wanted to keep working together.
God, isn't that funny how that path goes?
It's crazy. It really is. Everything's a weird kind of river that you just you go down.
So then you start dabbling with the wood. You push the second Kickstarter out. Are we at Dogmite yet? Okay. So then we say, you know what? Maybe, and is Dogmite the woodworking in your head at that point? Or?
No, not at all. It was the game. Okay. I think we formed the company with the second game.
Gotcha.
Just because we wanted to separate it from Mike's old company and we had to tie it into Kickstarter. But we did start delving into the wood stuff a little more seriously at that point. I think we did a little deck box that didn't do very well. And then we did the dice chest, and it was a simple candlebox design. I remember when he brought me the first one that he made, and I was playing in that Pathfinder game. And, I'm like, let me take this to my next session, see what everybody thinks. And we just made a couple revisions and thought about how we could customize it thematically. And it went well. And I think we did $40,000 on that one.
No kidding.
Yeah. And I think that's the point when we said, okay, all right, we're not game designers. We're grunts. Let's get out in the wood shop and see what we could do. And I had experience as well. I was a painter. I was making my own stretcher bars and frames. And so I knew it was an easy transition for both of us. And I think, honestly, we're just more physical kind of guys. We just responded really well to that.
From a design perspective, both of your expertises apply, right? And enjoying games, you get a feel for it. And Lord knows there's a market, man. There's a market for high-end gaming accessories. And I'm your target audience, right? Because and I think, and I lied to you. I thought the component collector was the first thing I got from you. I think the first thing I got from you was the deck box that splits.
Yes.
Yeah. With the magnets, is that?
No. That might be somebody else. That might be somebody else.
It
might be Elderwoods.
That up.
It might be Elderwoods.
Maybe that's who it is.
Or Wormwood. Could be Wormwood.
When you said deck box, it made me go, holy shit, was that Dogmite? But I am your target audience because I mean, I'm not 17. I have disposable income. I enjoy gaming, and I like having nice things, right? And I like upgrading the experience. And one of the first things when I realized that I was going to get back into role playing, and I had coveted your screens, right? Seeing your screens in your newsletters and stuff like that for a long time. But I'm like, I can't justify that. But boy, as soon as I got 5 guys saying they play a game, first thing I did was go and buy one of your screens. And part of that is because I knew it was really good. But let's keep talking. Let's keep moving forward. So then you put out the candle style dice holder, right? That goes over really well. That's when you realize, hey, this might be something.
Yep.
What's next?
The adventure case was the next one. And that's kind of an interesting story too. The adventure case is kind of a travel box for GMs.
Yeah.
So it opens up on hinges. The top portion of that box has two interior doors that open up, and then it makes a screen out of the box that you were using. So just a real nice, clever little idea. Nothing game breaking. And we went to our first Gen Con with Livestock Uprising, and before we went there, we had some deck boxes and some dice chests, and I think we had 10 adventure cases that we made, and we sold all the adventure cases the first day at Gen Con.
Wow.
They were $60. They were ridiculously low priced,
right?
And not at all profitable. But one of the people who's still fans to this day that visited us, I had one adventure case there as the prototype to show everybody, and I wouldn't sell it. And he came back every day and kept asking me to sell it. And I'm like, I just can't do it yet. We paid this much money for Gen Con. We have to go through it and make sure everybody sees it. So I think after that was when we hard pivoted, and then we did the adventure case Kickstarter, and that did, I think, $85,000 or something.
Very nice.
So at that point, the games were gone, and the wood stuff was all it was.
Now, had you both at that point committed this is going to be a full-time thing, or was it still a side thing?
Oh, it's still a side thing.
Yeah.
I was an adjunct professor in arts at the university. Cameron was a little luckier, and he dove in quite a bit. His wife is a surgeon, so
gotcha.
That afforded us, a lot of flexibility. So he worked really hard. We were both working 7 days a week for years, for probably 3 years at least.
Wow.
And and that's after 2 years of the games, and then we jumped into the wood stuff.
So I've talked to a couple of people, Michael, that are in the industry, and that, we talk about this transition with them as well, right? When you start to realize, like this might be more than just something I do on the side that allows me to go on vacation once a year, right? You start realizing this might be a profitable thing. But what I keep hearing, and tell me if this applies to you, is there's the fear that tomorrow it could end, right? So that but eventually you start to realize, like, I am on a thing. And I'd be curious to know when you and Cameron kind of figured that out, when you realized that this was not going to go away, that this was not, we're going to put out 4 Kickstarters and then nobody's going to buy anything afterwards. When did you get a feeling like we have tapped into a market?
That's interesting. I can remember one conversation that I had with a friend of mine. He actually came by the shop and he was visiting us. And it was when there were probably 3 or 4 of us. It was Cameron and I, our very first employee, and then somebody else that we had just hired. And he said something that really resonated with me, and he was pushing us to get out of the shop, right? Because that's all Cameron and I were doing, was working out there every day, and it's not sustainable. And he said, if you get out of the shop, will people stop buying from you tomorrow, or in a month, or in a year? And we're like, I don't think so. I think we can delegate that and, oversee
keep the quality
enough.
Control.
And then he said, can you go make that up in sales on the marketing side? And that was a game changer. And he was a business consultant of ours eventually. He's a C-level kind of guy.
Right.
And he saw us from our infancy all the way through. And it was kind of funny. It was really funny. But after a while, he's like, all right, you have 1 month. Get out of the shop. Do whatever you need to do to get out of the shop, because it's now become an entity bigger than a garage entity. And yeah.
That's cool, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's very, very cool. So obviously the GM box was huge. And I remember when that thing came out, I was like, that's clever as hell. When did the screen design happen? So for those listening that aren't familiar with their stuff, if you haven't already gone to the website while you're listening to it, do it. They've got an incredibly clever system that they use for the screens. And I'm going to let Michael explain it because he'll do a better job than I did. I ordered mine not understanding how cool it was. Like, I understood how cool it looked and the feel of it, and I already had some of your wood products and I knew how nice it was. When I got it, I was like, son of a bitch, this is really, really clever. So Michael, I'm sure you can explain it better than I do. Explain how your GM screens work.
Sure. We initially started with 3-panel. They're made out of banded wood. So if you imagine 3 separate panels held together with side magnets and steel rods that hold them and click them together. So it's very flexible to move around your table really easy. The coolest part, like the sexy part, is the sculpt on the front. Yeah. So we have Alyssa Mental draw designs for us, thematic stuff, dragons and Cthulhu and taverns and spellbooks. And then those are sculpted directly into the wood. So the front side's very thematic. And then the back side's all utility. Still beautiful because you get kind of the flat panel of the wood. But each panel has 6 embedded rare earth magnets, equally spaced, and then you get a couple of plexi panels, either half panels or full panels, depending on what it is. And those are really helpful for attaching maps and charts or writing dry erase. I think the dry erase is one of the best kind of features for me, because it's a notepad that you don't have to put on the table, and table space as a DM is huge. It comes with ball bearings that click on those magnets as well. It's pretty flexible. We have a lot of accessories now that we've kind of added: a pen holder, a dice rack, a little shelf that's really popular, just to put your minis on so nobody can see them and they're not sitting on, you're just setting an Avernus book or whatever it is you're running at the time, or Malifaux. Not Malifaux, but
Through the Breach.
Through the Breach, yes. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, well, and the other things that I love is I love the initiative tracker slots. So there's slots along the top that you get these really nice dry erase clear markers for initiative, which again, yes, I could use index cards, fold it in half and put it on there. But every time I pull out my little, the table loves it. The table loves it. And I love it because they're cool and they feel good. The other thing because I wasn't aware of the steel rod magnet that connected them all. And that's the part that I was like, wow, this is like, I put it together and I was like, wow, this is really cool. Then I was like, oh, I can go pipe 2 more panels. Right. So now I've got a 5 panel. Well, that was easy to do. But I can make it a 3 panel when I take it camping with me and I run games while I'm camping. The other thing is the pack flat. Right. So you can take it apart, pack it flat, and just it's very clever, man. Very clever.
Thank you.
What were the iterations on that? Like, I'm sure the first version didn't look like that.
No, the first version was it was for a show for Geek and Sundry, actually, and was the first one that we built. And I built it in the shop, and it was more. It's hard to explain. If you can imagine a small little U-shaped cabinet on the bottom of the inside of your DM screen.
Okay.
Like a wide O on the bottom of each of those panels. And then the panel itself is nailed to those.
Oh, okay.
And it's miter cut so it all fits in one set area.
Right.
So that obviously not as versatile, a pain in the ass to build, just impossible to reiterate. And then we did a custom screen for Vampire the Masquerade on Geek and Sundry, which was that was kind of the breakthrough one. And the first one, you'll see that if you go to our site, it's officially licensed by White Wolf. And it's a vampire screen, but it's still kind of the old school. It wasn't sculpted directly into the wood. It's either a hand cut metal applique or a sculpted wood piece that is then applied into the wood.
Got it.
So it was actually Alyssa and Lindsay, our creative director, that suggested that why don't we cut it directly into the wood? And they presented us with that, and that was the game changer. And I think that was about 2.5 years ago.
So what do you see going? Well, actually, before I get into that, let's talk about the challenges of doing this, right? So, every small business, medium-sized business has its own challenges. So I don't want to get in that. Do you notice any particular challenges in the gaming industry? And being a producer of products in the gaming industry?
Ooh, that's interesting. Specifically for the gaming industry, I think we're always fighting against that perceived niche.
Yeah,
a little bit, and we do Facebook advertising and Google ads, and we talk a lot to people from those companies because of the money that we spend on those formats. Yeah, and every piece of advice that they've ever given to us is wrong, because it's amazing. They don't understand the niche, and they don't understand the client base. Gamers are smart people, and they don't fall for the same tricks that other companies do, which is great.
And we talk to each other.
Yeah, and they talk to each other. Yeah, and that's one interesting thing that is, I think, we learned a long time ago, and it's helped us immensely. We know. our marketing is we try to make it nice, but it's not, the psychological creating a need in that isn't a need, kind of that kind of psychological gaming that occurs in other companies. And I don't know. And I think Kickstarter, the platform, is uniquely tied to the rise of gaming. I think there's a synergy there. Yeah. And that is a completely different business model than any traditional business. And a lot of people just don't understand that.
Yeah, I was actually, and I might look it up and give it to you offline, but I was reading it was a podcast where a guy is an economist, a research economist, and he was talking about some of the fallacies of advertising on Google and Facebook and stuff like that. So it was interesting for you to say that, because it ties to what I've been learning about that process too. But there's a language, right? You can't use the same type of headlines and stuff like that other industries can use and have it work on gamers itself. And again, I'm telling you how you do your business, right? So shut me up at any point.
No, please.
But my perception is how I should phrase this, is that you have like I said, a very specific niche, right? So, I mean, you put up an ad on Facebook and I'll come across it, right? And depending on how long it's there, the one thing I'm guaranteed is I'm going to flip through it and I'm going to see comments like, holy cow, that's amazing. That's good. And then there's going to be somebody going, oh my God, I would get it if it wasn't X dollars, sure. Right? And, yep. I mean, and by the nature of what you're producing, people are priced out. But luckily, obviously, there's enough guys like me that appreciate it and know that, if you want something nice, you got to pay for it. Has that ever been a challenge for you, as far as, a fear of pricing yourself out, or have you just learned now that, you make good stuff and people will pay for it?
Yeah, both of those are true.
Okay.
I think now we certainly know, a lot of what you said earlier is dead accurate for how we think of the business, as far as, hey, I got 5 people that want to play in a game. What do I have? What can I get? I need a screen. Yeah. Because other than that, you have minis, you got dice, you got books, and people like immersion. Our industry loves immersion. I do. I've got a ton of our stuff. I've got a ton of other people's stuff. Because it's a lifestyle. It's not not about one night or one event. And we've tried to go the other route with, trying to have more entry level stuff that's $20 or $30 just to see what that market would bear. And as an American manufacturer, it's just not, we can't compete.
Right.
Especially now. Maybe 8-7 years ago when the industry was a little bit smaller.
Yep.
If we were first, maybe then, but everybody's got a laser engraver now, and how many wooden token organizers are there now? Sure. And then Game Trace comes in, and everybody's doing it. There's always someone else coming up behind you that's going to do a clever idea better. So what's that leave us? That leaves us the luxury, high end, really killer stuff that has a really high barrier to entry.
Has there been a temptation to outsource any of this and take it overseas?
No, never. It just, we can't.
It's not what you do, right?
It's not what we do. And I don't think it would. They just couldn't do it as well. Maybe it's possible. I don't know. I love our crew. We have the best crew we've ever had, and it's just not an option right now, or hopefully ever.
How scary was it to actually have your first payroll, to actually hire your first person? That's got to be a scary moment.
Yeah, it was. It was Brendan, and his nickname was Puzz. Long story, but he was actually a stretch goal on our Adventure Case Kickstarter. So we put him up. I think if we reached 50 grand, we'd hire him.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And he was a lumper. He was working for us part-time, but he was a lumper full-time for some other company that
I don't know what a lumper is.
You load big boxes into trucks.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah, but you have to do it a very specific way and do it. He was kind of the organizer of that. But he hated the job. He hated his supervisors. So he was coming in to work on the weekends with us. And we told him, he knew he was a stretch goal.
I love this.
Yeah. So we launched, I think, on a Tuesday. And I think we were at 25, 30 grand by the weekend. So we brought him in on Monday and said, hey, we think we're going to do 50. So we'd like to hire you full time. And he said, yeah, I put my 2 weeks in on Friday.
No shit.
Yeah. So he knew. And it was great. He became our production lead for a while.
That's great.
Yeah. And moved up with us for a good long time. Great guy.
That's cool. That's very, very cool. And you may or may not be able to talk about it, but what's Dogmite look like a year or two from now, product wise? Is there things that you're excited about? Is it more and better or more and different or?
Well, it's more and better, I think, is probably the first answer. I have a dream. There's a product I'm kind of at the initial stages of. I don't even know what it looks like exactly yet. Yeah. But it's kind of the other thing that you don't know you need yet.
Beautiful.
Because I think there's a lot of coverage already, right? There's dice boxes, there's screens, there's dice towers, there's rolling trays. There's a lot of things, but what's that next thing that's hasn't been built yet? I don't know. That's my dream. I don't know exactly what that looks like.
Oh boy, you get me excited, man. That's cool.
And we'll see. But it's gotta be right now, and I think that's certainly a lesson that we've learned. We used to go like pedal to the metal and put out, hey, I have an inkling of an idea. Cool, let's make 100 of them, put it out there and see what happens. And we're much smarter now. But one thing that we're working on right now, this is the first time I've ever mentioned it, it's a visualizer. So a lot of the screens that we do a process called selective staining. And a simple way to put it is a paint by numbers. Okay. Basically, so we have imagine a dragon on a mountainside. You could choose what color you want the mountains. You could choose what color the sky is, the dragon, the wings. And that is a huge part of our Valhalla screen sales. And our craftspeople are amazing. This is all hand painted.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it turns out really, really well. But we're having really interesting orders because Selectively Stained is available on our website with not much information. So then our customer service team reaches out to you within a day or two and says, cool, what would you like? And a lot of them are very easy. I want the wings yellow. And we give them kind of a PDF, almost like a coloring book page where everything's separated by value. And they can choose A is blue. So the mountains would be A. Those are black. And the wings are B, whatever. But one of the things we find is that our clientele are a little more creative with their descriptions. So we'll get like, I want the spell book to be legendary and mystical.
Interesting.
So that's hard for our team to work on, especially when that's our customer service team finding out what they want. We pass that along to our finishing department, and Thomas is standing out there. Poor Thomas, our head of finishing, going, what does a mystical color scheme look like on a candlestick? So we're going to take away a little bit of that kind of opaqueness to it, and we're going to make a real-time visualizer so you can pick a design and basically color it in. And a lot of the stuff that we do is a lot more complex than that. So I say the wings of the dragon are red. That's one part of it. So there's an initial colored tint to it, but then there's an overwash of a ebony-based oil stain that pulls it all together. So we're going to have those options available, and you can see it in real time and choose sanded highlights or engraving on the back. So
what I hear you saying is, one, from a customer standpoint, I'm going to be able to see my screen. Mm-hmm. Right. Which is huge. Right. And I'll be able to play with it. Right. I'll be able to play around and go, yeah, you know what? Blue sounded really good. But now that I put it next to the red, so that's huge from a customer standpoint. But from a labor standpoint, that's got to be big for you as well. Right. The back and forth and stuff like that. That's time consuming.
Yeah, it is.
And ultimately expensive. So that's a really, really big deal.
Hero Forge. Like, how many people have made Hero Forge minis just to mess around with?
I would love to see that stat. Yeah. I would love to see the stat of the number of Hero Forge minis made versus done. But it drives the site, right? Yeah. The traffic comes there, and I would imagine that you might end up seeing something similar. Mm-hmm. Like what percentage of people design a screen and never order it, but that creates the funnel, right?
Right.
That's internet marketing 101. So I had been, like I said, a follower of you and a customer of you for a while. And it only took me getting one or two things from you to realize what you guys were doing. And like I said, no brainer. When I got back into RPGs, literally the first thing I did was reach out and buy a screen from you. And part of that is because I'd been coveting it. Like I had bought it like 3 times in my head and just needed the excuse, which was 5 other guys to go, yeah, I'll play. I'm like, good, because really what I wanted to do was order that screen. But there's another company out there, Wormwood, and how I know nothing about their products because I've never owned any of them. Right. But they're targeting a similar niche as you, with the kind of the higher end wood stuff. What they do is a lot different than you. So like it's now gotten to the point where I wonder whether they're a reality show versus a thing. So I'd be curious what your thoughts from the outside watching, because it didn't start that way. And then suddenly it turned into like, and anybody watching, you go to their YouTube and it's drama. It's literally almost a weekly drama show. As somebody who's in the business, like, what do you think when you see that?
Yeah, we know them well. I know Doug, the former CEO. We've talked many times. He actually was at the first con that we went to at Origins. I think it was probably 6 years ago. And he introduced himself, and I knew who he was before he, as soon as he walked up. They started about 2-3 years before us.
Well, I don't think I realized that.
Yeah, and they, that takes into account the 2 years we spent on games. So
sure.
They had quite a bit of a
huge head start.
They're an amazing company. They're probably, before the table Kickstarter, I think I would put them at 5-6 times our size as far as staff, probably revenues, somewhere
Isn't
in that.
Funny, I never would have guessed that because I've you're my company, so that's what I've always been. That's
great
funny.
to hear.
Interesting.
It is, but they're much bigger than us, and
I did not realize that.
You can just. We're in the same industry. We're in the American manufacturing industry.
Yeah.
I know how many employees they have, just because they're open about it.
Sure.
I don't know. It's interesting. They're on a different model than we are. We started on a Kickstarter model, and then we moved away from it. And we got into some trouble during our component collectors, which you were a backer of.
Yep.
We're still fulfilling those 3.5 years later. And we underpriced them by half, and we never should have took that many orders as a company working out of a garage. So we kind of learned that, and we moved away from Kickstarter for a while. And we made a lot of mistakes on a lot of those campaigns during the component collector directly after that we learned our lesson from. And we stayed away from Kickstarter to grow our retail presence because that's Kickstarter is such an up and down kind of like it's whitewater rapids, right? Like, and you can't predict what's coming up, and that's no way to run an American manufacturing plant. So we purposely moved away from it. Our Kickstarters now are very limited. We'll limit it to 100 items, or we'll do monthly waves that are so small we know that that's a self-limiting factor. Once we're out 6 months, 7 months, and we're at 199 backers, we know that that's a limiting factor that nobody's going to put in for, and we get it, and that's with purpose. So they're going a different way, and God bless them. I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about a lot of things that I'm not.
Yeah, no, we're good.
No. But they're going to have some challenges. They're really good at marketing, and are they too good at marketing? I don't know. It is that the bane of it. One of the things that a lot of people outside of the industry might not understand is that the revenues that you get from Kickstarter don't apply in a traditional sense as far as finances or loans. Banks don't consider that as revenue. It's a one-time order. So
kidding.
So a lot of the things you need that we ran into that with component collectors. That did $350,000. We moved to a new facility from a garage. We went through that money in 6 months. And we weren't even, I have an MFA degree, Craig. Like that didn't set us up for business success.
Yeah.
So, we've been paying the price on that, like long-term fulfillment forever. And you can't get a loan based on that. It doesn't go into your P&L.
Right.
So it's a different business model. And when you tie yourself to that business model, you rise and fall with it. So
it's interesting to me, and I've talked to several companies, designers and owners that have done Kickstarter, did it for a while, stopped it, similar to what you're talking about, ones that would never do it again, ones that have their business model built around it. And one of the things that I think that is a misconception, and correct me if I'm wrong on this one, because I know I have no firsthand experience, but the perception for people that aren't in the business is like, wow, what a great cash flow, right? You get all your money up front and you're good to go. But the more I hear about it, it's a cash flow challenge, because for that exact same reason, which is, you don't have a regular flow of money coming in. You get it, and as it's burning, and there's no replenishing it. You can't go out there and ask for more money.
No, it's a liability.
Yeah.
That's, if you want to view it as such, that's how we view it.
Interesting.
We run a Kickstarter and we'll do $30,000. That is a $30,000 liability.
Interesting.
And it's not cash flow money machine. You have to spend that very carefully. The longer fulfillment takes, the more unforeseen things that occur. We're delivering Cocos still, and there are fabrics that we had made that had used them that aren't made anymore.
And that's
that we've had to change. And just what's the cost of that compared to, what it was 3-4 years ago?
Right.
And you make a mistake, it is because of the uncapped nature of Kickstarter. Unless you personally cap it yourself, any mistake that you made, if you underprice anything, that is times 10, times 20. What you don't know what it's going to be. And that's one of the problems we had with the component collectors. They were probably half priced what they should have been. And you
just figured that out too late.
Yep. And look, Wormwood, they're an amazing company. They've grown quicker than us. They run things a lot differently than we do. They're amazing marketers, and they're probably a lot smarter than I am. But if I had, they had the table Kickstarter that did $9 million.
Yeah,
I would have canceled that, because I would have canceled that on day one.
Yeah.
Because if you do something, if you're selling that well, then it's underpriced.
Oh, well, that's a very interesting way to put it. That's exactly right. Well, I love my component collector, and I'm one of the backers that have gotten it. And it sounds like the vast majority have, but you still have some trailing ones that are handing out there. What happened? It just too many customization options.
Oh yeah.
Because that's when I saw it, I'm like, God, this is great. I get to pick this, and I get to pick that, and pick that. But the business owner in me is just like, what a effing nightmare.
Yeah, it is. That's absolutely 100% true. The business consultant I talked about earlier, he called me about 10 minutes before we launched, and he was looking at that page, and he's like, and we had, we'd done an $80,000 Kickstarter before then, and we were hovering right around there for our Kickstarter. So we had no idea that anything we would do would be 350, 400 grand. And he called me and he's like, I feel like these are underpriced. I'm like, no.
They were, by the way.
They were. They absolutely were. The funny thing is, they weren't when we were working out of Mike's pole barn, where his surgeon wife was paying electricity for, and we had 2 employees, and we were paying ourselves.
Doing it on the weekend when you had extra time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But once you sell, I don't even know how many, 6,000 of those.
God, that's amazing.
Yeah, those mistakes get made. And a lot of people, we lost a lot of customers from that.
I'm sure.
We did, and I get it.
And that just sucks.
It does. Sucks. I get it, though. I understand it. That we had, when we closed that project, the day we closed, our fulfillment was 50 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take with the day we closed and how many pledges, that's a 7-year fulfillment timeline.
Yep.
And so once we moved, I made the terrible mistake of saying, hey, I think we can do 500 a month. And I remember saying that on an update. We were in an empty building. We hadn't moved yet. We moved in between Origins and Gen Con, which is a terrible time to move. And it was just, then we thought, oh, we're going to fulfill this in a year. We're going to sell them like crazy. We're going to have revenues coming in like mad. And then our retail revenues are a fraction of what you need to have a space and 20 employees. And we burned through that pretty quickly. When you start talking about, $90,000 a month that you need and your revenues are 20, then it's pretty easy to go through 350 grand pretty quick.
Well, and I can tell you, Michael, that trying to figure out how to word this because I want it to be accurate. I'm the kind of guy that would have said, you know what, screw you. Mm-hmm. I gave you my money. Where's my stuff? But I will tell you, whether this was a conscious thing on your part or not, because I got mine, but I waited a good bit. I waited longer than I was supposed to, right, to get mine. There was two big factors for me. The reason that I am still a big fanboy and do not hesitate to spend money with you. One, this is before we've even talked, obviously. One is the transparency through all of that on the Kickstarter was something I had never seen before. Like, you guys owned your shit. Yeah. And whether you were conscious about that or not, or it's just who you are, it had a huge impact on me as the consumer. Like, you didn't go silent, because that's when things get screwy, right? Like, suddenly if I don't hear from you, and trust me, I've got well over a dozen Kickstarters that have never been fulfilled that I've backed.
Yeah, me too.
And as soon as it goes dark, I'm like, that's it. We're done. I know we're done now. But you guys never did that. You said this was a mistake. This is where we screwed up. This is where I screwed up. And that had a huge impact on me as a customer. I got to tell you.
It's good
and then to top it off, when I got the damn thing, I'm like, holy shit, this is really nice. Mm-hmm. So if it had sucked, then you would have lost me too, but it didn't suck.
Yeah, that's true.
So my last question on that is, hands down, when I sit down at a gaming table, I use it when I play tabletop games. So like Malaphone, stuff like that. I use it when I do board games. I pull it out. And now I use it with my role playing. Every time. Where did you get that? Where did you get that? Mm-hmm. Where did you get that? So is there a future for the component collector, or are you going to be so freaking happy when that last one's made that you never want to look at it again?
There is no future for the component collector. Sorry to say. It's done. We had them available for pre-order for, I think, 3 or 4 months after we moved into the building, after we kind of knew we were in trouble. And I think at one point the price was 3x or 4x what they were originally. Yeah. And we were trying to dissuade people. We didn't want to take more orders from them. And we offered like 110% store credit to our backers at one point.
Yeah, I remember
refunds, and people weren't taking it. And I'm like, damn it, people, take it. I don't want to make these anymore.
Yeah.
And it costs us 15 to 20 grand a month right now to fulfill.
Oh, God bless you, man. That's rough.
Yeah. But we're going to build every one. And it's when things get tight and it's Christmas and I don't know. It's not the first thing to go, but we have to make strategic decisions at that point, and we'll fall below our goals. But I've got different responsibilities now too. I've got backer responsibilities, which we're at 94%. I think if anybody's doubting that we're going to finish that proof's in the pudding. Like, empirically, it's true that we're just going to finish this. Is it a blemish on our brand? 100%, absolutely. Yep. And I understand we've lost a lot of those clients, and we'll never get them back. But that's all right. I can't worry about that. It's just progress. What do we do better going forward? So
there was a lot of ways to handle it, Michael, and I my heart goes out to you, and I felt like you handled it the right way.
Well, thank you.
And I don't hesitate to spend money with you again. So
I got banned from reading Coco comments because I take those personally, and I had.
Oh, I can't imagine, dude. So I can't imagine.
Yeah, and I get it, and the
that makes it even worse, right? Because you understand why the guy's pissed.
Yeah, and I get it, and I want to tell him the truth. We're actually going to do a video once we're done, maybe a little sooner than that. If we reach like 95%, I think we're gonna Mike, Cameron, and I are gonna sit down. We're gonna shoot a video update, and we're gonna go into kind of a lot of the reasons why we screwed that up, and just be really open and go, look, we know we lost you. Cool, I get it. I got yelled at Origins by a backer 2 years ago. And it was a guy I knew. I had talked to him about stuff, and he screamed at me in front of like a full booth of people. And that I feel that. But at the same time, I'm like, it's a $40 gaming accessory. Like I'm a grown man.
How bad did you want to pull $40 out of your pocket?
Like I'll refund you. Like don't come screaming at me about it. But I understand disappointment as well. So
it's I've been very lucky in my career that my mistakes were not that public. I think that's probably the best way to put it. And like I said, you guys had many ways you could handle it. And I have been a customer of seeing it handled many ways. So, but that's rough, dude. That's rough.
No,
but what's good news is that you're still doing it.
Yep.
So guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back from this break, I want to talk a little bit about the actual manufacturing process, because I really want to understand, how we go from there, nothing exists, to suddenly we have a prototype, to suddenly we're able to produce it, on a sustainable level. So we'll be right back. Howdy friends, Craig here. You deserve a new playmat. Here on the 3rd floor, we use Mats by Mars. They are scratch resistant, waterproof, wet erase marker compatible, almost free of glare, and lighter than neoprene. Mats by Mars gives you over 40 designs to choose from. You pick a mat, pick a design, and then you pick an overlay, like one for Marvel Crisis Protocol, Star Wars Legion, or even Malifaux 3rd Edition. Those overlays will really speed up your deployment and make the placement of objective markers so easy. Use our promotion code in the show notes to get a 10% discount on your first order. In the notes of your order, you can even request the 3rd floor logo on your mat for free. That makes the best mat in the business even a little better. So get some new mats, save yourself some money, and help support the show. Go to matsbymars.com. All the details are in the show notes, including the discount code. So, Michael, one of the things that I love about having this podcast and talking to people like you is there's a lot of shit in the world I don't know, right? Like, so I've made like shitty furniture before, right? So, I mean, like I have a saw, like, if I go down to my garage, I've got a saw and stuff like that. And, and I've built some things and they're embarrassing. I'm fascinated about the reality of it. So what I'd like to do is I would like to step through from initial idea to we're selling it on the website. So is there a somewhat recent product that was that we could use as an example to kind of step through that? What's a good product to step through that process with?
Yeah, I think the Lantern Dice Tower is actually a pretty good one because it's really complex.
Yep.
It's different than what we've made before, but still kind of consistent with where we want the brand to go. So
well, it looks like one of your products, right?
Yeah.
When I saw it. And what you need to do is, again, for those listening, you've got to go check this stuff out. I don't have this Lantern dice tower, but I've been eyeballing it pretty good. So let's start. So the thing does not exist.
Doesn't exist.
Where's the first idea? Where's the first thought come from?
Well, basically we want to kind of fill every niche of an RPG table, but do it in a way that's never been done before. And that's kind of one of the things that we put on ourselves is let's do this so that first off that it works. It's gotta work for me at my table.
Yep.
And it's gotta fill my need. And then it's gotta be able to be producible. That's, one of the things that we learned is cool. We can make one. We have to think, how do we make 1,000?
Yeah.
And that has to come into play every product that we design. So I remember we were going, Cameron and I, it was right after the pandemic, I think. I might be getting my timelines wrong, but after we came back from lockdown, we were going to pick up plexiglass. We had to pick it up because plexiglass was one of the things that was massively impacted by lockdown. Right. Because every storefront needed it, every public facing space did. So we were like scouring the state looking because our normal supplier didn't have it. So we were driving, Cameron and I were driving there and we were talking about our dice towers. And I've always wanted to make a better dice tower than anything that we've offered in the past. But one of the things that we kept hitting on was the tray. There's an awkward quality to a dice rolling tray. It takes up a lot of table space. Yep. It disrupts the aesthetic of the tower itself by having this bottom L to it. So, and our stuff, we like organic kind of looking things that feel thematic and that the tray, if you're doing a Cthulhu dice tower with tentacles all over it, the tray being a rectangle, just it doesn't work.
Right.
So I always thought that I didn't use a dice tower myself until we made these little traveling dice towers that are really small and personal and work great on a small table.
Yep.
But that's basically like a vertical dice tower because there's such a small table footprint. So I think that's, you kind of put these constraints on yourself just through brainstorming and talking it out a little bit. People do that as artists a lot. So when I was in art school, I'd say like, all right, paint something in using only blue and pink. And it's a person, and those constraints kind of lead to creative breakthroughs in some ways.
And a lot of people don't realize, because you're speaking my language, is like so much of creativity, especially artistic creativity, is problem solving. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is problem solving and posing the problem.
Yeah.
You know, what if this, or can I do this? So that makes total sense to me. So if you sum up the constraints, is you wanted an aesthetically pleasing, functional dice tower, and the bottom tray piece was the bugaboo.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I 100% agree with you with creative problem solving. That is my entire job is creative problem solving, whether it's managing people or creating product or whatever. So, so we came up with this idea, like, why isn't there a vertical dice tower? One that, like, the tray is in and of itself. So there's no other footprint but the dice tower itself. And this is how Cameron and I work. It was an hour conversation in a truck while we were driving to pick up plexiglass. So, and you know, the beauty of it is because we have so much experience now and we understand the manufacturing process, and our manufacturing process is so flexible. We can just say, cool, what if it's see-through and it's got a plexiglass tower inside and it's held together, and the wood, you can see through the wood because it's cut out entirely, so you can still see the dice. So I don't know. At one point, it's restrictive, and then we brainstorm on the what's possible beyond that.
Yeah,
and that's all that happened. We released this little thing called the Dragon Glass, and it's basically a see-through dice box. Mm-hmm. So Cameron is the programmer, and he's the 3D sculptor, and he loved the idea of wood that's cut all the way through with armatures that hold the box together. So dice aren't going to fall out, but he loved the look of that, and nobody else is doing that. And that's another thing we strive for as well. So he's like, what if I do that as the sides of the dice tower? We put the plexiglass inside as kind of the baffle thing, and then it just lands below itself. And that's how that first started. And then at the same time, we were getting hit up by a think tank from MSU, some kids that were working on this LED lighting strip. And they liked the company, and they came in, they pitched us an idea. We didn't go for the idea, and we didn't steal it, but it was just interesting at the same time that
the timing of it. Yeah.
The timing was really interesting. And they wanted to do something that was like flat, completely like a flat piece of paper with LED lights that was like the back of the screens would be fully illuminated, something like that. So it didn't fit in well, but we were discussing a lot about what LEDs could actually do for the product. And we just started researching that, and then we kind of rested on our crew a little bit to fill in a lot of the blanks. We have a lot of really skilled people with varied backgrounds.
Right.
And we have a tinker, and he's like, oh, I can build you an LED panel for that. And we put it at the bottom of the dice tower, Bluetooth compatible, and it's crazy. And you know, we have a plexiglass armature with a wood outside structure, and the LEDs light up that plexiglass. And you want to talk about a luxury item that you don't need? That dice tower is certainly a luxury item that you don't need.
And and here's the thing, right? Like, so I remember getting the first email about it, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I saw the price, and the price made me go, well, that wasn't what I don't know what I was expecting. That's not what I was expecting. Mm-hmm. But that's the beauty of me knowing you as a customer, right? Mm-hmm. Even if there's something, and this is a challenge for you as a producer, I imagine, like, I know it's worth that. The question is whether I want to spend that, right?
Sure,
And those are two different things. But let's go back. So now you guys are driving back from there. You start to you get the initial idea. You kind of, and now were you both visualizing it at that point? Like had it been partially built in the truck?
Yeah, but it was a lot different. I could show you that I have the first prototype that we built.
Yeah.
It didn't have lights. It didn't have, I think it had the base, but it was drastically different. And then it didn't have 4 sides of wood. Basically, it had 2 sides of wood with a plexiglass armature in between that to hold it together. And then it emptied out onto itself. And I think that's it. You start somewhere.
Right.
And then you keep going. And that took, I don't even know, 3 months probably till we had one iteration of it that worked. So there's endless problems, like laser cut plexiglass with CNC wood on the outside. It just something doesn't fit for 9 trials. And I'm
going to try to describe it for people. So imagine a dice tower, listeners, that doesn't have your traditional rollout tray, but imagine it's just the tower, and you drop the dice in the top and the bottom is the tray. Right. And you reach in and you can see the dice, which is really cool the way you guys did that, so that you can, because that's the other thing is visibility. After I roll the dice, I like to see the damn things. Mm-hmm. So it's very fascinating. I'm glad we picked this for the decision. So the iteration is, then you do the first prototype, obviously identify immediate problems. So what were some of the immediate problems in the prototype that you said, this doesn't work, we've got to fix this?
Well, baffles are a pain in the ass for one thing. Just because the speed of the dice, how many roll in. So basically, if you can imagine, it's a lantern. So it looks like a lantern that you would hold and carry around. And the top part of the lantern is filled with 5 baffles.
Right.
Then we have an empty space and then the tray itself on the bottom. So as we changed that size, we knew what kind of like dimensions we wanted aesthetically. But as we change those baffles increase in size and distance. So every time you make a baffle farther apart from another baffle, speed increases. So then you got dice kicking out on the tray.
Which is the last thing you want.
Which is the last thing you want. And we also, to have visibility, we couldn't have 1-inch sides on the bottom base surrounding that tray. So you're balancing that very limited, like a 1/2-inch space to keep the dice in with how many baffles you want to get randomness. The baffles have to be the right size so they don't get trapped in there.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. It just takes so we had the outside aesthetic worked out for quite a while, and we knew we could do that.
Right.
We knew we could make that work eventually, but we had to get the guts working, and that that's 3 people working on changing a file, transferring that file, somebody on the CO2 laser cutting it, trying it, putting it together. And then we had problems with different plexiglass has different kind of coatings. So some are paper lined, some are film lined. And because we were cutting so thin, some of the paper was burning up or it would melt and it wouldn't come off. Yeah. And you're talking about 5, 6, 7 layers of plexiglass to make the internal baffle. That's an hour and a half of work just for somebody to rip the film off and then put it together. And it's all those unforeseen kind of issues that you need to work out as you go through that kind of creative process. And I think that's why I love it so much and why Cameron and I work so well together. He's very technically oriented. I'm pretty good. I'm a pretty good problem solver. But I know I'm the gamer out of the two of us. So I know what I want.
You're the test kitchen.
Yeah, I'm the test kitchen. Yep. And I'm also in charge of all our production. So I have that in mind as well. So how hard is this going to be going forward?
You've got an eye for aesthetics as well, right? As a background as an artist, I mean, you can appreciate the value of good aesthetics as well. But that is an interesting problem to solve now that you're saying it's amazing, Michael. I see it and I go, what a great idea, right? Mm-hmm. Having no idea the problems that had to be solved. Like, because in my head, all I see is the working product. I drop the dice in the top, they drop down to the bottom. It's high enough that I can see them and grab them, but obviously, but boy, that's real easy to at the end product. Yeah. I can't imagine the iterations that goes through. Now, something else that is very signature for you guys is the ability, we touched on it a little bit, is the customization. The ability, you really allow incredible amount of customization. Is that something that's you consider a tenant, or because it'd be easier if you didn't, right?
Yeah.
So, and how do you balance that, right? Because at some point you got to say, look, this part you can't customize, or it's not feasible for us to price this such that this can be customized. How do you figure that out?
It's customization within aesthetic constraints. We understand what we're capable of doing and what the differences are between those two things, or between any product. So we know what the window is, basically. We know what we can funnel through. Our product line a year ago was much bigger. So after lockdown, we probably halved everything that we offered as far as products, which helped quite a bit. So do the things we do best better and quicker and more customizable. We used to customize everything, and every option was available. We're still pretty wide in that regard.
It's impressive.
No, thanks. But it's all within the same catalog, right? And then we kind of counterbalance that. About a year and a half ago, we knew that having in-stock items was a really good offering for us, and that it spurs on our retail. So it's great for the staff. We let them do whatever they want within reason on in-stock items and experiment a little bit. And a lot of the stuff that becomes staples as far as customization are started by the staff because they're coming up with really cool engravings, or they're putting it on a side that we didn't consider, or something that we didn't even think was possible. We're doing inlays now, like silver and gold inlays on screens that are engraved, and glow in the dark screens. That's one of our crew, Jake, came up with those. And it's still the same product that we always did, but it's something that they can push a little farther, and we see how it goes. We put it up as a one-off in-stock item. It's available that you can buy it. What you see is what you get, for one thing, which is hard to find anywhere. And it ships in like 4 days. So it might not be, it might not be the thing that you dreamed that you could get, but it's something you've never seen before. And a lot of people are like, that's perfect. And the more cool stuff we put out in stock, the more we sell on custom. It's amazing.
Yeah. It doesn't surprise me, because it was, I think where I started with the GM screen was an in-stock item. I was eyeballing an in-stock item and, debating it, and then I ended up customizing.
Yeah.
So that makes a ton of sense to me. So let's talk about the outside of those frickin' screens. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and again, for those of you that haven't gone to the site, just go to the site and you're just going to hold on to your wallet.
They're pretty thick.
Oh God. So, and let's use Alyssa as the person you partner with for a screen. So what are the steps? Do you have a concept? Like, you go to Alyssa or somebody like her and you say, hey, I'm thinking dragon this or Viking that. And then can you walk me through that process? A new inlay?
Yeah. She handles all the anything sculpted, basically. She's the initial artist for it. It used to be me. But she's so much better than I was.
Dude, she's so good.
She's sick. Yeah, it's crazy. And incredibly fast. She knows exactly what we need from that. A lot of the sketches that she does for screens aren't very detailed because the wood grain fills in a lot of that area that we don't need a lot of that texture. So we'll come up with an art description of something we want. And when we started, it was like, do a Cthulhu, do a spell book, do 3 dragons. And we'd like, go ahead. And she came back and we'd pick off the thumbnails of what she'd do and then decide to finish those pieces. So basically she draws it, gets it back to us in a thumbnail. We approve that. She finalizes it, make sure it fits within the parameters of a 3 or 4 panel screen.
Yep.
And then Cameron sculpts them digitally.
No kidding. Okay, gotcha. So he takes her 2D and extrudes it out.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And it's all hand sculpting. It's clay on a screen, basically.
Wow.
On a computer screen. So it's that fine detail. He doesn't push a button and it comes out. And yeah, he's gotten much better at it too. So yeah. And then we usually run a prototype on cheap wood and see how it turns out, make some changes, and then we're off to the races.
Then it goes from there. Now, when I interviewed Alyssa, one of the things that she mentioned, it was super helpful when she was in-house to be there with the other steps in the process. And she cited that as part of the reason why it's easier for her, she thinks, to be able to create these because she understands the other steps after her and being that close to it. So I would imagine from your side, you would have the same feeling about going to her as an artist, right? So her knowing that and having that in-house experience must make it easier for you to not have to explain things to a new artist, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's different considerations that you wouldn't understand. That the Valhalla screens have the initiative tracker on the top. Yep. So, and we cut those organically into the design. Now, there's an option to get them flat, but you got to go organic, I think. You just have to. But that means yourself. But that means it can't be an entirely active edge on top that wouldn't work. So understanding the process and that understanding that's a router cut that has to cut through those edges and hopefully turn out a little bit flat without tearing off a lot of the problems. And then seeing some of the issues with sanding some of the deeper organic kind of qualities of a sculpt or something. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's got to be neat for you, Micheal, to think back to, I didn't know shit about shit when it comes to this stuff to where you are now. That's got, you got to laugh a little bit, like using terms and talking about tools that you had no idea what those tools were X number of years ago. That's got to be a kind of a neat process, that learning process.
Yeah, it's certainly not the job you sign up for. It is not. I was with the art background. I came out and developed all the stains that we used and the colors that we used. And that's what I did when we started. I was staining 60 hours a week at one point, just crazy. And now my main job is managing the people under me, which is vastly different. And that's a relatively recent change, probably 2.5 years.
Wow.
So it's crazy. Running a staff of 20 is completely different than.
It's hard.
It is. It's
managing people's hard.
Yep.
Luckily,
but it's great. Very rewarding.
And that's that's what I do for a living, is manage people. And that's exactly right. I mean, it's hard as hell, but man, oh man, it can be rewarding, but very different wheelhouse for you.
Yeah.
So how often do you get to go back and itch the artist scratch?
Every once in a while. I think, you find it in different ways now. I think product development is still big, and I enjoy that a lot. Although we're kind of slowing our pace because of the constraints that we know we're under. We just don't want to throw everything out there. Yeah. But I still find that kind of creative outlet in, I don't know, making interesting marketing or putting out a good video. Or I get that fix every day. That's I think cool. In different ways, but I'll go out and stain. Now, if my staff is listening to me, they'll say I get out there once every 6 months, but every once in a while I do get out there, and I'm definitely trying to make more of an effort to get out there a little bit more and kind of show off what I can do.
Well, and that makes you better at what you do, right?
Yeah,
being out
absolutely.
there and being closer to it.
Yep.
So guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back from this break, I want to talk about two things. One, I want to talk about being an accessory maker to the stars. We kind of touched on it a little bit. And then I also want to talk about the newest Kickstarter for me that I backed with them. And I just got the game in, and it's the Labyrinthos. And I found out something about who designed that game that I didn't know before. So we're going to talk about that game. And I also want to talk about where you might have already seen their products. So we'll be right back. Right now is the part of many podcasts where someone comes on, interrupts the show, and explains that you should consider paying for the content you're already getting for free. They'll go on and explain that by giving $1 or more a month, you not only support the show, but you allow the show to grow and improve. Here on the third floor, we commit to not interrupting your episode of Tabletop Talk with such a plea. We pledge not to run a spot asking you to go to patreon.com and give $1 or more a month. even if there's a link in this show's description, and there is, we won't ask you to click it and become a patron. We won't spend time yammering about the benefits like early access to episodes, getting those episodes without ad breaks, or even getting a chance to play in one of Craig's RPG sessions. Anyway, enjoy this episode. We needed to clarify that we wouldn't do this type of solicitation.
Hi, this is Brian. I started listening to Third Floor Wars for information and insight about my favorite miniatures game, Malifaux. But I also get great interviews with game writers, designers, and artists, as well as some fantastic role-playing sessions with some really great players. I've been supporting them on Patreon for 1.5 years so far, and it has been well worth it.
It's time to give a quick shout out to some of our newest patrons. A big thank you goes out to Greg Packman, Eric Conrad, Joe Root, Alan Cardinal, Raven Shadow, Richard Beach, Philip Savoy, Patrick Allen, Third, Sean P. Kelly, Jesse Ravicki, James Kahn, and Rage Quitwire. Because of you and the other 100 plus patrons, we're able to put out content on a regular basis, and we appreciate it. Howdy folks, Craig here. Now if you love gadgets as much as we do, you're going to love the new Third Floor Wars Gadget Bundle from Schooner Labs. Branded with the logo of your favorite podcast, it comes with 2 measuring multi-tools, a compass stepper for those tight and important movements, along with a compact dashboard to track your turn, strat, and scheme scoring along with your soul stones and pass tokens. It is the perfect bundle for anyone who plays Malifaux or just wants to look cool while doing it. The link is in the show notes. Check them out and help support your favorite gaming podcast. So, Michael, we talked about it a little bit. So, was Geek and Sundry kind of the first time your products got FaceTime elsewhere?
Yeah, I think so. Of anywhere of significance, certainly. It was Ivan Van Norman, and he was working on, not on Deadwood, but it was, I can't remember the game now. Terrible. My memory's shot. Too much wood dust and varnish.
Sniff and stain.
Yeah, I feel terrible. But yeah, it was an Ivan Van Norman show on Geek and Sundry, and we made the first custom screen for it. And yeah, that was the first. Like, we were so excited to be on Geek and Sundry. That was a big deal at that time. It was massive.
And did it have an impact? Like, like, did you see that turn into a visibility for you guys?
In a different way than you might be thinking. I don't think
interesting.
It doesn't occur. You don't see 2,000 sales that day from that. I think it's more the doors that it opens up to you afterwards. And I think there's a layer of trust that it builds with other people in the industry. And it certainly led us to some of the licensing that we got for Vampire and Pathfinder and Call of Cthulhu, stuff like that, that just, once you get that legitimacy built in by having somebody at that level kind of give you their go ahead and the thumbs up, that's what it really led to.
Yeah. So what do you consider your most famous screen at this point?
It's probably the Joe Manganiello screen. I would have to say that. That thing's a beast. And, that's funny. That's a really good example of how that opens up. We got reached out to by WWE to do a screen for their live stream of Up, Up, Down, Down. And they were doing wrestlers playing RPGs.
No kidding.
Yeah, and we thought that was really interesting, and hell yeah, and it's, there's 500,000 people subscribed to it, so we did that, and then Big Show, the wrestler,
who's a huge RPGer,
huge RPGers, he's in Joe Manganiello's game, and he reached out to us, and he demanded we work with him, and we said yes. It was great.
You don't say no to Big Show.
No, you do not. No, not at all. And I think that's one of the things that it does. It just, whether it leads you to a licensing deal or I don't know. And it's not.
Well, it puts you in a different sphere. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it does. And it's all contributes to your long-term growth over and over again. A lot of those licenses, I remember we got the Vampire license, and we were insanely excited about it.
I bet.
And, we talked about like, do we have to expand our site? Do we have to expand the bandwidth? Do we need to hire people? And it just doesn't happen that way. Like it's
more
a
of a slow
burn. Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's doing wonderfully for us now. It's amazing. Right. But it's
you
not
didn't wake up the next morning.
No. I have one of my favorite sayings. I don't know who came up with this. It might be me. But a lot of people, they're looking for the unicorn, but you need to be the donkey.
Yeah.
And you have to, there's no one click button push to being a success.
Yeah. And
you just have to keep going. Persistence is key. Keep pushing it all the time and do what you do. And it'll come, the 7-year overnight success.
Well, 7-year overnight success. Right. But part of that is, and it's something that that we've hinted at, or I've explicitly said it, is making sure that the quality's there. Right. Mm-hmm. Because like we said, gamers are going to call you out on it. Right. If it's garbage, it's going to get called out as garbage and everybody's going to end up knowing about it. Yeah. Versus, the times that I've pulled out my screen and people are like, whoa, like, what is that? And then they feel it, right? Then they touch it. And so they're like, holy cow,
Yeah.
And I say, look, this is what I pay for it. And they're like, well, yeah, that makes sense to me now that I've got my hands on it, but that who knows if that's going to turn into sales, right? And it's not going to turn into sales the day after they look at it, because they're going to probably do the same thing I do, which is they're going to noodle on it and then there'll be the moment that they pull the trigger. And that doesn't happen overnight. So talk to me about the board game Labyrinthos.
Yeah.
I saw it come up on Kickstarter from you guys. Now remember, I didn't know that you guys had made games first.
Right.
So I was like, what the hell are these guys doing? And so I watched the Kickstarter video. I noticed, I immediately drawn to the aesthetic of it. The artwork was just stunning on it. Then I found out Alyssa, who I'm a fan of, drew it, and I'd already backed at that point, but got me even more excited. Where did this come from? Like, where did that start?
We hired Lindsay to make games for us, basically. We knew from our past experiences, as we've talked about, that we weren't the game designers that we thought we could be when we started. And she was a game designer and a damn good one. And so we kind of stole her away. We brought her up here. She's my SO, so that's a thing. But we brought her up here to run customer service, basically part-time.
Oh, okay.
Part-time. And then the company really started to take off. I think it was 2 months later was the Component Collector Kickstarter. So then the company drastically changed and grew massively very quickly. And she had a lot of ideas for games, and we wanted to see what we could do in the board game department, kind of piggybacking off of the back of the Component Collector.
Right.
So that's actually her second game through us. The first one is a hidden role game called Countdown Action Edition. Basically, Die Hard the game.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's good. It's a big group size, and I think that's one of the things that hurts it. It's like 5 to 20.
Yeah.
So it's hard to get right now, especially hard to get 5 people in a room.
Yeah.
But Labyrinthos was kind of, I think, the game that she was always meant to make with us. It fits really well thematically. It plays 2 to 4. You play as Greek sacrifices to the original Labyrinthos kind of myth. So the Minotaur's in there. You have to find the 4 keys that Daedalus made to escape. And that theme of sacrifice kind of runs through it really well.
Yeah, the theme works.
Yeah, and you have actions, and as you find the keys that Daedalus created, you have to cover up one of the actions that you had with that key, which gives you a new action.
Yeah. But
there's always something that goes away. And it's a really good. I've played it so many times.
I bet you have.
Yeah, it's so many times in so many different ways. But yeah, I really like it. It's a little take that, which I know isn't, which isn't super massively in style in the board game industry. Although I always dig it a little bit.
Yeah, but I don't think. And granted, I played a lot less than you have.
Yeah,
it does. So that's there, but I don't feel like that's the dominant thing. I think.
I agree.
Yeah, what I enjoy the most, one, I love modular, right? So the maze is different every time, and I've always like Carcassonne, stuff like that, where you're flipping the tiles over, you don't know what it's going to be, and it kind of the board builds as you go, which is really cool. But the thing that made me really happy that I bought it was not only did it look good in the components, I mean, it's quality stuff, but there's some really interesting decisions, and you talked about it a little bit with the keys and stuff like this, and I'm gonna talk your better half into coming on the show because I really want to find out how she got here. But it's a very, very clever game, and we'll link to it in the show notes. My board gamers listening, check it out. If you like a board game that you can explain to somebody very quickly, that has a theme that works, but more importantly, if you're a board gamer like me, I like to have important decisions that impact if I'm going to win the game or not. And the game has that.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. So it's a very, very pretty game.
And I think the last 2 rounds of that game are always different and always exciting, and you never know what's going to happen. And
they're nail biters. They're nail biters. Yep. And the other thing that is for me, it's critical with a good game is when I get done, if I lost the game, can I go back and go, had I done this, it would have changed it. Like the game has to have that, so that makes me want to play again, right? So like re-rack, let's do this over again. Because now I know, or I see what they did to win and stuff, and it does a really good job with that. So Michael, for people that are going to go to the site, if they haven't yet already, can we give them kind of an idea? We've touched on a lot of things. The GM screens, can we give an idea of kind of the array of what's available from a GM screen?
Oh yeah, it's 3 or 4 panels. Basically, they're landscape oriented. So it covers a lot of ground. You're talking 36 inches to 48, depending on the table that you have, but fully adjustable, fully customizable. And we try to cover all of the main themes in RPGs, and in a way that they're not always covered. I think we do a good job of that. So we have a Dracolich that's really evil, and so cool. you can get it in Black Walnut, or you can get it in Abyssal Black or Demon's Bloodstain or Selectively Stained. So we like to say that whatever game you're playing, you have something that fits, and I think that's where we get you. Because we know you're thinking about buying one Valhalla screen, but we want you to buy the other one for the next campaign you're going to run in 5 years as well. Once you do that, because it's got to fit that game for the immersion. And I think that runs true in all our products. We have a ton of dice boxes, rolling trays, dice towers, and check out the R&D stuff too, because we're always kind of filling that section with different things and letting our woodworkers run a little wild, and they do a good job of it.
And I think some of the things that, for those of you listening, it's not just GM stuff too, right? Let's talk about what players, our RPG players can do.
Sure. Yeah, the player pad is actually a huge thing for us. And that's we've talked about iteration of ideas, and that grew out of an idea that we had for a very small GM screen years ago. It's really interesting. And that was like a storage system for GMs that you could like write on your lap when you're running the game, and it just works so much better for players than it does for GMs. And we changed the size, so now it's about 9 by 11, and it's a dice holder. It holds dry erase markers. It's got a little rolling tray involved, so it's basically a rectangle with a bunch of utility involved. But the really cool thing is that there's customizable plexiglass that acts as the cover, and we etch the plexi to fit your system, your PC, basically. Yeah. So you can track spell slots, you can track key points if you're playing monks, which you should, and just a lot of different options. I think we have Starfinder on there, Pathfinder 2, a bunch of 5e stuff. So it's super utility driven. It doesn't really have a lot of the thematic sculpture, although we're working on that a lot of our other products do. But it's straight up utility with some beautiful wood and beautiful stain.
Well, it's cool. And a lot of the times when players, are using Scratchpad and no paper to do it, they can do it right on the box. Mm-hmm. They can grab the box, head right to the game, which I think it's it was very clever. When I saw it, it didn't fit my needs for what I do, but I was immediately identified. I'm like, that's cool. Yeah. That's cool. And it's neat for you, I would imagine, to expand out your customer base, right? Instead of just the GM,
right.
Now other people can bring their theirs, and then all the other players are going to want to get them too.
There's only one GM in every group. How many players are there?
Yeah. Oh, I've had that discussion where I'm like, what a terrible business model role-playing games are.
Yeah.
Like, you can buy our book once, and you can play with 700 people. And nobody else has to buy anything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Good model. Good business model. That's funny. All right, fantastic. So obviously, Michael, we're going to go ahead and put all these links in the show notes. And the thing I will tell you guys is get on the mailing list. You'd be surprised how often they have stuff come up that's in stock, that's priced not what you would expect. It's definitely worth getting signed up for it. So we'll link to that as well. Michael, an absolute pleasure, my friend.
Yeah, me too. That was great to remotely meet you and put a face to the name. So,
well, sometime when cons are a thing, we'll have to run into each other again. And like I said, we can look forward to your significant other hopefully coming on the show to talk about the process of building games. And for those of you that listen to the end, thanks for sticking around. Take care.
Hey, did you hear that? You leveled up. You finished another episode of Tabletop Talk from Third Floor Wars. If you want more from the third floor, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Head on over to our YouTube channel. It is packed with painting tutorials, gaming tips, battle reports, and role-playing actual plays. Did you enjoy this episode? Why don't you send a link to one of your friends so they can enjoy it too? Last but not least, write us a review on your podcatcher of choice. This helps us find listeners almost as cool as you.
All right, this is probably where I'm going to combine. So what we'll roll into is, and what I'm thinking for the promote segment, Michael, is I would just like to give an overview of like, if you go to our site, here's what you're going to see.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And just kind of talk through it, if that sounds okay to you.
Perfect.
But I don't want to chintz on it because, part of the reason you're here is hopefully somebody will buy something by listening. So
yeah, but I think that's better than the whole.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll just kind of roll into it. Hey, are you still here? Look, the podcast is over and you sat through all of the breaks and bloopers. Well, I mean, if you're here, might as well run over to patreon.com and become a supporter. Don't forget to rate and review this podcast too while you're at it, on whatever platform you're listening to. I do appreciate you sticking around. Take care.